Okay, well, we are at the 8 o'clock hour here. So I will say hello and welcome to the Paris Tech webinar, Flexible and Collaborative, the new FP&A criteria. Our speakers today, well, I'm Jess Otero, the Director of Marketing at Paris Technologies, and I'll be your host for today's session. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. We have John Florio, an expert in the FP&A field of over 30 years with special experience in the insurance and legal industries. And we have Jeff Gillian, the Director and Co-founder of Sprint Analytics, along with Kane Sherlock, who is the other co-founder of Sprint Analytics. I wasn't counting on him as a speaker, so he's not on here with the rest of us, but he is welcome to chime in as he is invited. So Sprint Analytics is an outstanding data and business intelligence firm in Australia, and we've invited them as our partner to present this webinar. So let me talk for a moment about what we're going to do. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be exploring the fundamental challenges that FP&A teams face in today's landscape. And it's basically two use cases. We have the spreadsheet side of the world, and we have the browser-based application side of the world. So this is where I would like to share with you our first poll question, and then I'm going to pass it off to John Florio. So I'll read this question. You should see it popping up on your screen. It is, what is the most important feature for you in an FP&A solution? So you can choose one thing, that it's flexible and collaborative, that it's secure and controlled, cloud-based, scenario and driver-based, or predictive and AI modeling. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit and I'll pass it over to John and he can dive right into our first section.
All right. Thanks, Jess. Jeff and Kane, welcome. Glad you guys could both jump in and join me for today's conversation. So Jess kind of set the stage for everybody that's out there on, really two types of FP&A solutions that kind of are out there in today's world. So we're going to spend a good amount of time, really, just the lion's share actually of our time, just kind of talking about those two comparatives. And there'll be some questions kind of as we go along. And I'm a little disappointed as a panelist that I couldn't vote. But personally, I would have voted for flexible and collaborative because to me, I grew up in the corporate world, mainly doing every single solitary thing through Excel. And everything that I did and was asked of me was kind of in a file-based Excel world. And for those of you that couldn't glean it from what Jess was saying earlier with bringing on Jeff and Kane, they have formidable knowledge when it comes to the browser-based side. I mean, they are certainly FP&A experts and they understand file-based Excel and the hell and the chaos that people go through. But the first thing I wanted to do before we start talking is really just kind of jump to Jeff and say, tell us just a little bit about your experience in working with the traditional enterprise application, Jeff, and just kind of walk us through a little of what you've done in that space.
Okay, thanks, John. I've worked in the business system space, whether it be ERP implementations and so on, data warehousing, budgeting and forecasting, FP&A systems, business intelligence. Been doing that for more than 30 years. And specifically, I guess, the last 20 years, I've spent in the data warehousing, BI and FP&A space, both on both sides of the fence, again, both with a major corporate and with a number of vendors.
Yeah, excellent. So I think we'll have some good conversation today about both sides of the house. I have been fortunate to work a little bit on the traditional enterprise side, but most of my work has always been on the Excel side. And as Jeff just kind of discussed, he's been implementing these traditional enterprise applications or browser-based apps for nearly 30 years of his career. So certainly an expert when it comes to that. And, one of the things that I definitely know is that whether you're using a file-based Excel or a traditional application, the goal of FP&A is to help automate the business, right, through their most mission critical processes. And that includes, which is over on the left-hand side of our slide there from Jess, budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So, those little skyscrapers down at the bottom, that's kind of representative of your business. And what we're going to talk today about is, what is the new kind of FP&A? And is it, obviously key bullet points are like, we want to reduce budget cycle, which really means, can we be collaborative, right? Because those of us on the Excel side, when we work on the budget cycle, it's really, okay, I'm going to do some work and then I'm going to share it. And I'm either going to share that work out on, SharePoint, or I'm going to email it to someone, or I'm going to put it in my OneDrive or something like that. And the definition of collaborative almost evaporates. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then you want to improve planning and forecasting. And the way you improve that is becoming a little bit more operationally efficient, which means you need to scale. How can I get more information to the people that are above me and need to make better decisions? And you can do that. One of the best parts of Excel is that you can absolutely do some more of those types of things, but it doesn't scale. And what I mean by that is all of us that have had a 20-tab spreadsheet know that when we make a change on one, we better make it everywhere else. And if we send this out, to someone else, we don't know. If I sent it out to Kane or I sent it out to Jeff, I don't know if they changed the formula, inserted a row. There's no real auditability. So you look at those things and you say, okay, everything there like just leans you immediately on those two items right to a browser-based app, which would, make sense. And then last is trusted numbers and insights fast, which means the flexibility that you need to make sure that you've got the data. And a lot of people are starting to call this, some people call it data integrity, some call it data unity. So we're going to talk about all of those things as we go through, because the mission critical processes are not just budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So as Jess scrolls to the next slide, one of the things I think that we need to understand is that any spreadsheet intensive business process is something that will often land with the guys and the girls that are running FP&A. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've got management reporting and analysis, right? All the close, everything that you want to be able to see, all coming from the same spot. Then the operational planning. How does our information change versus the products that we're selling, versus the products that we make, versus the expenses that we are incurring? And how does that go through? And just talking for a minute about that, I'm going to talk about the Excel side. I know on management reporting and analysis, and I know on the financial close, I know what we do, and those of us that are out there listening today that are still using file-based Excel, and you're not going to get me to tell you that it's not a great way to go. It is, but it's a slower process. And what I mean by that is you're probably running some sort of data export. If you're really fortunate, IT is giving you some sort of way to use some sort of an ODBC driver or some way to bring information together. But once you bring that information together, you're really just grabbing it off of Excel. And you're then forced into creating some really complex formulas to get the information that you want. And if you think about the fact that in file-based Excel, you're doing many different types of gyrations of how you are looking at that information. You may be looking at it by department. You may be looking at it by region. You may be looking at it by product. You may be looking at it by all three. And that's going to grow and grow and grow your spreadsheets and make it almost untenable for you to be able to manage that information. And so you have to look at that spreadsheet intensive business process, and you have to say, can we do better data collection? Can we do the regulatory reporting? And what seems better? And so, as Jess builds out these slides, she puts both the Excel icon in there and the browser-based application. So you think to yourself, is there a better way to do this? And as we continue to go through, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I'll turn back to Jeff and ask him at this point, when it comes to financial close and you're talking about an enterprise class, application, what's very typical when you're looking at a browser-based application? How do we get to financial close? Is it really as simple as it looks when you're seeing that in some sort of a demonstration?
Look, it can absolutely be a lot better than using, pure Excel spreadsheets. And a lot comes down to how well the applications have been developed. But yeah, you can generally close off earlier because you're getting the consolidation in your reporting and so on that just doesn't happen automatically in a typical bunch of Excel spreadsheets that you try and update, manually and that sort of thing. So yes, you can automate a lot of that, and potentially, depending on the system, give finance people the power to run updates on demand. But you still need something that can perform there.
So let me throw this at you real quick before we jump to the next slide. And I love this conversation. But do you find what happens? So here's a little bit of a difference, right? A little curveball coming at you. If all of a sudden there's a post-closing adjustment that has to be made, when you're using Excel, so when you're me and you're using Excel, and my boss comes down to me and tells me, well, we had to make an adjustment real quick, can you rerun everything? It's fairly simple for me in Excel. Again, a lot of management of templates and getting everything squared away. But once the templates are squared away and where they need to be, and someone says to me, we have to make an adjustment, something changed for our close process. And instead of me having to go rerun the ledger, do all the information from the ledger, pull down all that data, I can just kind of make that adjustment topside inside of Excel. And I probably get that information pretty quickly. Do you notice that with a browser-based application that it's a little more rigid? Do you have to go and rerun everything if you were going to make that sort of an adjustment? Or what's fairly typical when it comes to that, Jeff?
The normal thing would be to go and rerun an adjustment. Some people want the ability to manipulate their numbers manually, but that's not always the best way to go. But I've seen, solutions where they might be, if they make an adjustment in their ERP system, post a journal, they want to see that, they could be waiting 5 minutes or 5 hours, depending on how things have been done.
Right. Thank you for that. All right, so let's kind of dive in on this next slide to talking a little bit about, there was a study that was done by BPM Partners in October, just this last month, by Bark, who, as we know, is a great peer review company, and they partnered up with Business Performance Management Partners and Craig Schiff, who's been in this industry for about 1 million years. And they polled a bunch of CFOs and FP&A professionals and asked them, what does the preferred FP&A landscape look like to them tomorrow? And for them, it was self-service and ease of use. Now, this is interesting to me. So for those of you that are out there, and I'm going to show my age a little bit, we went from a time when I first got into this in FP&A where everything was self-service. And let's make it so that you can do your own stuff, do your own work, and go from there. And it adjusted over the years into more of a rigid format where you kind of put in your information, your parameters, your drivers, and your inputs, and that information kind of came out for you. And there was no real ability to do self-service. And now we're starting to notice over the last couple of years that self-service is coming back with a vengeance. And ease of use has become something that everyone's asking for. So applications keep getting better, right? I mean, if we turn this side over to Jeff, he would tell me that applications are so friendly. It's so easy to do stuff, so easy to join right away and know where you're going. And the ease of use when everything is set up is really simplistic, right? Really nothing to it. They're also looking for modern cloud-based solutions, which we kind of know. Then they're looking for that scenario driver-based planning. I don't think everybody wants to be in one of these situations where there's a big change in the economy or a big change to things, and they want the ability to look at various scenarios and save out as many versions as possible. They want to see integrated planning. So that is kind of the buzzword over the last 3-4 years has been extended planning and analysis. It's now becoming integrated planning, meaning if you went back to that other slide, you're doing operational planning, it all needs to tie in, right? Your sales planning has to tie in for FP&A. It's not just the finance teams anymore. Then that data unity, right? That's that old cliche, that one source of the truth, and no poll would be wonderful here in 2024 nowadays if we didn't talk about predictive and artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence is coming. Everyone's talking about it, but whether it's actually really here yet kind of remains to be seen. So when you think about these things, pretty much on the file-based Excel side, you're probably just seeing bullet one, self-service and a little bit of ease of use. Can't really get cloud, scenario and drive. Well, you can save as many spreadsheets as you want. So let's talk about scenario being the version. So you can save that out there. Although, not that I want all of you to raise your hands, but how many are sitting out there right now with what they call final version 2, right? So, there's final, then there's final version 1, then there's final version 2. So, we've all been down that road. So we know that we've saved off 1 million versions of the same final spreadsheet thinking that we were done. The other stuff seems to kind of fit towards that browser-based application, right? So there's kind of a little bit of both. And so let's talk first about the spreadsheet problem, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff. So let's go to
Wait, hang on
Yeah.
real quick. I'm just
Okay.
going to share our poll results real quick. On this
Okay.
call, what people thought was most important was the flexible and collaborative, the scenario driver-based planning, and the predictive AI modeling. It was like an even split. Those were the most important things.
Wow.
And I'm going to go ahead and launch the next poll, and you
Okay.
guys can go on and keep talking. And for our attendees at their leisure, they can answer this next poll.
Excellent.
So I'm going to read it real quick. What type of FP&A solution are you or your company using today? And the choices are just no application or a browser-based application.
Excellent.
Okay,
All right.
back to
Yeah.
you.
All right, so let's go to that next slide, Jess, and let's talk about the spreadsheet problem, right? So in today's world, we know is this you, right? Is a complex spreadsheet that's distributed on your network drive or through your email. You can lose track of the versions, which we talked about. Errors can creep in. Next thing you know, you're working on weekends, right? And you guys that are over there in Australia that are, it's spring now. Nobody wants to work on the weekend, right? Everybody wants to get outside and have some fun. Right. And then there's the what if analysis, and reporting is manual and tedious. So like when your boss walks in and says, can you give me the 40 top clients that we've been working on? I want to understand their profitability and I want you to be able to tell me what that is. That's going to wind up being 15 spreadsheets by the time you're done. It's going to take you almost a week to get it done, even when you're a master at Excel, right? So new scenarios are going to take days, not minutes, and you have to copy models and paste. More potential errors again, and then there's time wasted getting aligned on the actual numbers, which we here at Paris always call clerking and administering spreadsheets. And then you're burned out from the incessant stress of manual consolidation of those spreadsheet files. The repetitive tasks suck up all the time and energy that you have, and then there's no time for the higher level work. And so then your finance staff that got hired to do analysis winds up leaving, because all they're really doing is they're just being a slave to their spreadsheet every single solitary month trying to get things done. So the spreadsheet problem is real. It's an actual issue. And if you look at file-based Excel, let's go to the next slide, Jess. So what you're going to see, right, this is a typical magic quadrant where we have flexible and easy to use down at the bottom. Thank you for those that voted on that side. And then you have secure and controlled up on the left-hand side. I noticed nobody was too interested in the secure and controlled environment, but that's okay. So when you think about Excel, you think about its real strengths, right? Number one, it's flexible. Number two, it's got some strong modeling, powerful calculations, and you could do some really rich presentations. But as it starts to, the cracks start to show when you start to use it in your enterprise setting. And that's especially with lots of people or lots of data or a very collaborative process. So you wind up having data integrity issues. You have no real source system integration. You have manual consolidations, and you have a lack of auditability. So I want to yell at Jeff because I know he's the one that wrecked my spreadsheet, but I have no proof that he did because I can't go back and audit and see that he's the one that did that. So all the way over on the right-hand side in our little magic quadrant, you can absolutely see that Excel is unbelievable leader when it comes to flexible and easy to use. But when it comes to a controlled environment and the ability to scale and those types of things, it's not really going to weigh in. So you think about that problem and you're like, okay, what's worse? Like, do I need the flexibility or do I need that ability to have controlled source where I know where my data is? So let's go to the next piece. Next slide, Jess. Yep. Or is this you? So I'm going to turn this piece over to Jeff. He'll go through this slide real quickly so that you guys can get an understanding of what a browser-based app is if you don't already use one.
Okay, so browser-based apps certainly can help you with your month-end reporting or reporting during the month and your budgeting and forecasting. They're meant to streamline, centralize and automate your chaos, as they say, but it's certainly a step up from the, just working in Excel. Absolutely, it's a step up. I've implemented solutions where people have been doing everything in Excel, and when the accountants say, "Oh, we were able to leave it at 9 o'clock, every night this week during budget season," and I'm like, "You happy with that?" "Oh yeah, because we used to stay back till 3 a.m." I've seen that, so you get some pretty good advantages with that. A lot of it comes down though to having vendors and consultants that build your models the way they need to be. There can be some limitations as to what they can do with their products, but if they don't get the model quite right, then people get frustrated. Sometimes the models work well in the first year, but not the second year, because they haven't thought about how easy they can, get you started with a new, budget cycle and so on. Adjustments, changes, some of them can be, relatively inexpensive, but some that are seemingly not so difficult, can take vendors a long time to do it, and that costs you money. And the other thing I'd say, yes, your browser-based system is bureaucratic. Somebody controls the system. Who sets up the access to it and that sort of thing. But it doesn't mean you can adjust it easily to what you need. Sometimes, yes, building new reports and that sort of thing can be good, but find a lot of people, finance people in particular, are like, "Why can't I just do this in Excel?" And that's something that you miss with this. It's great if you want to roll out an application, budgeting and so on, to people in different states or countries and that sort of thing, because it's a zero footprint environment, easy to do. But finance people are like, "Yeah, I could do this better in Excel, as long as they can update their data into the central database and that sort of thing." Yeah. And the other thing is some systems kind of shoehorn you into their way of doing things, so you miss out on flexibility. You don't always have the functionality you want, and often in cloud-based environments you don't have access to make changes and so on yourself. You're reliant on an IT department who may not understand your financial models, or the vendors, who some of them don't either. And so it just doesn't always keep up with the day-to-day requirements and so on that you'll have.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Let's go to the next slide, Jess. And as we talk about that, then let's put them into our quadrant, right? So if you're thinking about a traditional enterprise application, that you're in a controlled environment, you have tremendously high data integrity, you've got workflow management, and it is very auditable. Let alone the fact that now that you're going to be in a cloud-based situation, you're going to be very scalable, you're going to be able to continue to grow that stuff, but you need to think about a couple things. Number one, it's going to take, Jeff started talking about it. It takes you away from spreadsheets, and we're going to show a really compelling slide in a slide or two. So I'll save that reveal, but it takes you away from spreadsheets, and a lot of people gravitate to spreadsheets. It makes them happy. It's rigid, right? So it lacks that flexibility like Jeff was talking about. It's IT or consulting intensive. And no question about it, it has a high cost of ownership in comparison to like an Excel model, which clearly does not have any cost or very minimal cost with which to own. All right, so as we look at those two systems and we continue on, we realize that there is, let's go to the next slide, Jess, if we're there.
All right, I'm just going to share these results real quick of our poll question number 2, and we're
Yep.
leaning a bit towards the traditional and browser-based scenario in this call, although we do have some Excel people here as well. And I'm
Excellent.
just going to briefly launch our last poll question, which is, what is the most important outcome for FP&A? Would it be accuracy, analysis that drives better decisions, or data unity, the one version of the truth that the enterprise believes in? So please go ahead and answer these questions so that we can see what everybody thinks. And we'll move on to the next slide here.
All right. So this is the big reveal, right? So 84% of companies that had adopted a formal enterprise technology end up supplementing their system with spreadsheets. So the shocking piece of what we're talking about is, and Jeff touched on it now, spoiler alert, I think Jeff saw the PowerPoint deck, so he knew what the answer was from the people that were out there. But those of you guys that are sitting out there and you're listening today, at least 8 out of 10 of you that are on this call are still doing something with your Excel spreadsheet when you're working with your browser-based app. You just are. Those are the stats. That was the study that PwC did, and you just can't stay away from Excel. No one can, right? So the browser-based app is kind of giving you what you want. It puts you in this formal process. Excel is a little bit more flexible. So when your boss calls on you to do something, you're pulling that data out and then you're manipulating it in Excel. And that's pretty much what mostly everyone does. So you have to think to yourself, man, there are these two ways, and they're not completely opposed to one another. They are certainly sharing some information. Like if we had had a Venn diagram, we would be showing you that they are certainly sharing information amongst and between one another. But is there a better way? Let's go to that slide. There is. It is Paris Technologies. It's the better way to FP&A. So the shocking thing about Paris Technologies is this. All of the things that you like about your browser-based app, it's scalable, it's in the cloud. I have complete control, I have auditability, I have all of the things that I would want to be able to do. All of those things are in the Paris product because we are connecting through the cloud into a database. But you've got the opportunity to embrace Excel. If you've got a model that you've built in Excel that you absolutely love, you can integrate that template to the Paris Technology solution. So no more clerking, no more administering. So now if you look at this quadrant, you've got Paris all the way out here on the flexible and easy to use, and you've got Paris all the way up there on the secure and controlled. Everything is there. It is truly the best of both worlds for anyone that wants to look at a browser-based application, or if they want to look at something that comes with Excel. To the point of most of the people that we compete with at Paris today that are offering a traditional browser-based application are now providing an Excel add-in because they know that 84% of the people are still using Excel. So they're now creating an add-in that can kind of gives you some limited functionality. Paris is letting you use all of your regular Excel functionality, but all your formulas, all your logic, and all your data is stored in the cloud. You never have to worry about formulas ever again. It's all sitting out there with Paris Technologies right there in front of you. That is the big reveal as we come to the end of our webinar. I think we have one more slide that kind of illustrates just what you can do with Paris products. So that's the Paris product there in the middle, and you can connect anything to the Paris product and be able to get data unity, that controlled environment, the flexibility of Excel, and you can still connect to browser-based tools that you want to use. You can use third-party tools like Power BI and Click and Tableau, or you can actually connect to Paris's browser-based tool. So we also offer a web tool for those users that are out there that don't like Excel, and that's called Leonardo, also available. So those things are all there for you. I'm dying to know what the answer to the last poll question was, and I know we're a minute overdue, so if there's
Yeah.
any questions, I want to make sure we go through that too.
Yep, we're just wrapping up the poll here. Here we are definitely clearly leaning to analysis that drives better decisions, which I'm not surprised. I think that is definitely high up there. But we do have somebody who says the most important FP&A outcome would be data unity. So that's fantastic. Thank you, everybody who participated in the polls. And I'm just going to leave this up here for a moment so we can take a Q&A if you'd like. You can drop it in the chat, or you can put it in this little Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom call. And if you would like to meet with us and talk about your FP&A situation, you can always do that. And this QR code will take you right to a meeting link where you can schedule at a time that works for you. So
And
if
of
you
course,
have, oh, go
Jeff
ahead.
and Kane are available as well. So if you're over in Australia or APAC in general, and you're listening in today and you want to book that call with those guys, they're available as well. So any way you guys want to make this happen, it's okay by me.
Okay,
Any
we did
questions?
actually have one question come through.
All right.
Somebody is asking, is there really that much time to be saved in Excel?
So I think that there is, if I'm understanding the question correctly, the answer is if you're staying in file-based Excel, then absolutely not. You are not going to save time. But if you're using the Paris product, the answer is dramatically different. So here's a quick example of that. We just built a law firm here in Philadelphia where we're from. We did some revenue planning for them. When they gave us their template that they wanted integrated because they liked it so much, it had 275,000 formulas on it. When we were finished, it had 3 formulas. We were able to drop all the extra tabs from their template. So they had 1 template, 1 tab, 3 total formulas, and it updates and is automated every single solitary week to give them a constant update of where they are with their plan. So compared to the amount of clerking and admin that they had to do with which to get that information. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. And that was actually the only one that came through. So I'd just like to thank our speakers and our attendees. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, John and Jeff. It's a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, hope everybody has a great rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
Thanks, Kane.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.